So thank you very much to all our speakers. We're now going to have a Q&A session. So please get ready with your questions, and I'd like to invite all the speakers to come and sit down here. I think we are missing a seat because I've got an extra person. Have we got someone happy to sort of stand? You're right. Okay.
I have hopes that I'm going to go.
Okay. So, do we have any questions in the audience? There's one gentleman back there.
Hi, Michael Selway, System Simulation. Fascinated by all of the presentations. Imperial War Museum, you limited your training to reduce hallucinations to just each transcript, each piece, which is really interesting. Don't you lose something though? Not being surely the advantage of being able to ask across the piece. You know, what did people think rather than what did that person think?
So to a degree, it's baby steps. So one of the things that we didn't want to do initially was apply vectorization across the entire set of 8,000 interviews, purely because the interviews won't agree with each other. And so, you know, because it's recollections, somebody might say this happened in 1915, or this happened in 1916, or I was there, or it didn't happen. We didn't want to get into that sort of conundrum at this stage. So what we decided to do is just center it on each interview, make sure that it gave really good, solid, non-hallucination type sort of responses. And then that's one of the next parts of the roadmap. I mean, the bigger thing is that we want to put this live at some point in the future, but we're wrestling with this is the conversation we'll keep returning to big tech and things like that. How do we pay for it? If 1 million people start to use that site when it goes live, it'll bankrupt the museum within a week. So how do we actually do this? And one approach we're looking at is building and hosting it on-prem. Now, that's not appropriate for every organisation. We've got facilities and we've got the expertise in-house that we could do that, but that's definitely not a long-term strategy for the entire sector. So, but anyway, I digress. Yeah, we tried to keep it honest and precise for the moment, and then we'll build, hopefully, a cross-interview sort of interface so you can ask a question that still doesn't hallucinate, but still gives you good insight.
Right, do we have another question? Someone on the back row, I think. Yep. Great.
Thanks very much. Josie Fraser from National Lottery Heritage Fund. Quite a few of you mentioned data quality as an issue in different aspects of that. I'd be interested to know, and obviously data quality is an issue that runs in parallel to AI, either interactions or solutions. It's still kind of important regardless of how we make use of AI. What I'd be really interested to know if the panellists have got any views on how we can improve quality, data quality for the museum sector.
You need to, I would be a bit more bold. You must not use AI if you don't have guarantee your data is up to scratch. And that means that when you are questioning the data, the answers are what you expect them to be, not what the bias of the inaccuracy or the integrity of the data is giving you. And identifying that is very, very hard. So if you don't have, and it's not like rocket science, you just need to have, the descriptor, you need to have a list of features and standardization, basically. So having lots of different systems running at the same time is not very helpful. Different people who are inputting the data, they need to know how to input it to actually log into the system. And that's, I think my main suggestion would be Is the literacy of the people using the systems to input the data is the first step. But I think the main message I can give you is, if your data is not good, you will have issues with AI that you will not be aware of because you don't understand what the data is telling you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think what I'm trying to get at is, given that, how do we as a sector drive up the quality of the data across all of our organisations, not just one or two organisations?
That's the question, the £1,000,000 question. And this is not the sector, it's any sector. So I work with healthcare on the side note, and like understanding, having them to understand that the data that they have in healthcare records is not accurate, is not properly recorded, is a big, big job. So I think you need to talk to the government to give you support on that. I think that would be, that sounds horrible and impossible, especially now. But yeah, it's partnering with the other organizations like we are doing here. So we are sharing practices. But we need to be looking for funding for that end rather than for using AI. So data comes first. AI is one of the tools. You don't need to use AI, you can use something else. But the funding, all the funding should be focused on making sure that your data is integral, not let's play with AI and see what happens, because then you are just increasing, you are deepening the problem. Does that make sense? So yeah, I think the government needs to have an overall overarching statement in terms of how to use AI, and they haven't. Any guidance they gave doesn't touch on data at all. But this is one thing that it might be a bit more hard to do. But yeah, all the funding should be focusing on making sure the data is correct, not on using AI. That would be my advice.
Yeah. And Richard, you want to say something?
It's kind of half a thought, as I'm not a specialist in heritage data. But I was reading a paper recently which was talking about approaches to getting different types of heritage data to be interoperable, so that you could look at how different data sets interact. And what it came down to is that there are some shared ontologies, but they're not universal yet. And that seemed to be a really important point that the researchers were making. And I think that means that there needs to be more dialogue in the heritage sector, talking about how stuff is documented, and especially in languages beyond English as well, because one of the key points of this research is that it's available in very few languages. Maybe half a dozen are well documented. So something with a huge number of speakers, like Arabic, has to rely on stuff that's documented in the English language. What we're facing in the UK is very often going to be English language, but we have the opportunity to move beyond that and introduce other languages as well, so there's proper international collaboration. So the underlying data is absolutely vital. I think looking at the other end of the issue, it would be helpful if the AIs were less emphatic in their results. So they tell you when stuff is uncertain. That would be really handy, so that then as the end user, you can make an informed decision about how you use it. So kind of surfacing some of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes.
There is a whole area of AI called uncertainty modeling, which nobody wants to know about because it's quite mathematically focused. So it's much more flashy to do machine learning, pressing buttons and getting the very, strong opinionated tools. But there is an area. So yeah, talk to the academics who are researching AI, because they can help you. Ontologies is the foundation of, how you would use model uncertainty in that way. I don't think it would make the machine learning tools less emphatic, though, because they are built to do that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, just in the project that we're looking at, we did some early stage work a bit with the UAL. They did a project, I think it was part of towards the National Collection, around curator-driven enhanced labeling, so trying to fine-tune collection data, collection annotation. So effectively, the stuff I showed about jokingly, the machine got it wrong, it thought things were babies or whatever, or faces where there weren't places. The systems that we were looking at using that was coming out of that research project were around, doing sampling and having curators who were trained on just humans trained on stuff to to do, say, 10% of the collection, and then use that kind of human-driven expertise to then extrapolate it out over the rest. And that's something that we see in all of the AI and all of the clients across all sectors, is that the human-in-the-loop model is really important. It's the only way to get something more approachable, something more approaching kind of verifiably accurate stuff. Because the human has to be in the loop. It's whether you're right at the front of the process, you're in charge of it, or you're kind of cleaning up the mess afterwards. So yeah, I think there's a few options to try and kind of put those tools into the hands of the real experts and power those up rather than kind of see it as a replacement.
Great. Do we have another question? Someone in the front row on that side. Great.
Thank you very much. Hannah Barton here from National Museum Scotland. I've got a question about, I guess, AI in relation to the labour market and digital skills more generally. I came to mind after hearing the talk about Goose and from the Imperial War Museum, but also anyone in the panel might want to respond to this. My question is, how might organisations balance the opportunities that AI tools present to them in terms of engaging in beyond human or tasks which require an unviable amount of human hours to complete, such as maybe mass transcription, translation transcription, against the risk of undervaluing digital skills within digital teams by outsourcing to an AI tool to do something which is more, more to do with creativity and close reading interpretation, and then kind of inadvertently, chronically underfunding digital teams that might actually need to have more people to do the work effectively.
I could sort of talk on that a little bit. I mean, I think it kind of, what I was saying before is kind of true there as well. I think that it's, work is about creativity, is always going to be about human input, and that's at every level. But you shouldn't defer your creativity to an AI. There's a very famous aphorism, it's a tweet actually, which says, I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so I can do art and writing. I don't want it to do art and writing, so I have to do the laundry and dishes. And it's the same thing for everyone's workloads. So it's very much about focusing on increasing the digital literacy, but the AI literacy is now indivisible from digital literacy. The mainstream cut-through of AI technologies, people are using it in hidden, shadow ways in every organisation. Whether or not they've got the permission to do it or not, it's just kind of happening. So I think the challenge for leadership is to be out there in front and to kind of lead, be the right kind of advocacy about it, but in a kind of balanced way, and always to be investing in the skills and the human use of these tools rather than to see it as a cost-cutting kind of numbers game.
And with Goose, it's very much not about replacing the human, and leaning into the human is a really important part of it, and that came out through all the co-creation, that it was very much, oh yeah, we would like to, we need these skills, but we know that there are other humans like us out there who've got them, and we've got some, and we want to share them. So a big part of Goose is giving those small and volunteer-run organisations the opportunity to use a tool that has been developed and created and improved by people working in the same sector, doing the same thing, so they're not reinventing the wheel. I like that kind of concept about, where do you need the human? Do you need the human at the beginning, or is it just, I think you need it almost, it's almost like an AI sandwich, I think, with Goose. You put AI at the beginning, you put humans at the beginning, humans at the end, and you use AI to kind of help you with the middle bit if you haven't got the bacon yourself.
That's perfect. Yeah. I think we've got time for one more very quick question.
Can I ask a question too? Oh, yeah. I have, if I can.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to ask, yes, of course.
Babak, is Marjory. It was very nice to see Orlinda's picture. Can you hear me? Babak? Yeah, fab. I was curious to hear, so I was looking at your podcast, and you have the podcast in 3 languages. Could you give us an idea of how much, inaccuracy did you have when you translated from English to Portuguese and Dutch, or which one was the first, and then was it recorded individually? Could you give us a bit more on the actual podcast that you were talking about? Thank you.
The quality of the audio is not very good, but I think you're asking about the process for translation and recording, right?
Yes.
Sorry. So we had 2 people who would record the audio, myself and one of the Brazilian writers. The Brazilian writer did maybe 80% of the Portuguese texts, or recorded about 80% of the Portuguese texts, and 20% was generated by a machine. Of the Dutch and the English recordings, everything was actually recorded, not produced by a machine. The translations, you asked about the accuracy of the translations. The accuracy of the translations was pretty good, but the wording that was used in the translations was often not very good, using strange words, strange sentence constructions that only really could be picked up by a native speaker. If you read it as if you speak the language in which the text was translated, if you spoke it reasonably well, you would often probably not pick up the strange wordings that were used. And what the source text was depended on who wrote it. So we had I'm spitballing it a bit, but maybe 70%, so 70 of the 100 stories were originally written in Portuguese, and 30 were originally written in English. So then the Portuguese were translated to Dutch and English, and the English were translated to Dutch and Portuguese. Does this answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Great. So thank you very much to all our speakers. I think that was an absolutely fascinating session, and thank you very much for kind of delving into it a bit more in the questions. We're next going to be going into a break, but during the break there's going to be an opportunity, if you meet in the front here, to tour and explore the new app that we heard about at the beginning of the session. So if you want to meet here, if you want to do that, and otherwise it's time for a break. Thank you very much.